All right. Looks like we're here. Oh, happy Friday. Drinking some cool water for the working man. I'm kind of in between things, and I got my mind going. My mind and my body are going north and south. That's the great Wang Chi said in Big Trouble in Little China. So I picked the easiest thing I could think of to do today, which for me in this moment was going on to Reddit. And even though I don't really can't support Reddit anymore because of what they're doing and what their intentions. I don't want to put stuff on Reddit and then find it. I don't know. They're the enshittification of things and them wanting to get involved with the AI and large language models. I mean, it probably can't be helped, but I just I don't feel like I want to contribute when I know that's where things are going. So I kind of stopped. So I made that goal to stop, and I stopped. I think a lot of people did that, and at least I could say, in terms of participating in Reddit, that I've kept my word. But still, people do post things, and I often wonder if if it's if it's worth not participating. I don't know, but I did it, and I'm still doing it. But people, it is still a repository of posts and things, so I do end up looking at it every once in a while. And so I thought we could do that now and see if we can find some stuff to read and think about, maybe questions to answer, yada, yada, yada. The normal kind of streamy stuff. I've got it sorted by new, which may be a mistake. I'm not sure. We will see. This one might be interesting. So this is posted by Gator1508, finding the right OSR game for players. Hey, Frederick. Yep, Reddit is still a thing. So Gator1508 poses the question, maybe, finding the right OSR game for my players. I'm a BX guy, so I would gladly run that or OSE, but I know my kids and their friends, Gen Z, won't really like certain aspects. So I'm basically looking for the unicorn among OSR systems. Separate races class, ascending AC, well-designed thief class, action system more like 5e, i.e. roll initiative, do whatever action plus combat move on your turn, but no bonus actions. Please, wisdom and intelligence modifiers matter at least somewhat in spellcasting. For clerics and wizards, basically I want some of the things I know that the players like from 5e without all the nonsense that otherwise comes along in 5e. I kind of feel like this is the Shadow Dark. Will Kreskin says we're going to get a comment here. It's going to point him towards Shadow Dark. Oh, look at that. Hot underscore fan, 2933 throws in the Shadow Dark reference right away. I knew that was coming. Other people think Shadow Dark. Blade underscore M says possibly Tales of Argosa, which I've heard of. I know it's by the folks who did Low Fantasy Gaming, I think, but I haven't read through Tales of Argosa itself. Let's see what else we got. More Shadow Dark. Oh, Blade M posted twice. More Shadow. Oh, people are posting twice all over the place. Dragonbane. Beyond the Wall. One of the things I think, now, it's hard to tell from the context of this post. It sounds like, I'm reading between the lines a little bit here, that his players have played 5e already. Because I think if you just have some kids and they don't have experience in 5e, I think that it doesn't matter. They're not looking for it. Like my daughter, who has played D&D with me once or twice. I know has some friends that play D&D, but she hasn't played 5th edition. She doesn't know anything about 5th edition. So she wouldn't care one way or another because there's no comparison, right? So if you're in a situation like that, I would just say just try BX. But I'm going to guess that Gator 1508, the kids they're trying to get involved, do have some 5e experience. So they're not fighting against it, but trying to account for that. Cybersloth, hey Cybersloth, says, hello, I really enjoy your content. Started playing tabletop role-playing games 2 years ago with 5e, but now they're playing OSE for its open-endedness and modularity. The system better supports my setting. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunities to try something new with the kids. I don't know. I think so. So I guess what I'll say is this: I think sometimes we underestimate other people's abilities to pivot. We maybe overestimate where they're getting stuck. Now, there are certainly some people, kids, adults, whomever, who there are going to be things about playing BX or old school essentials, let's say, that they're going to be problematic for them, and some of them with good reason, right? Thieves' skills. If you don't look at the thief a certain way, it can be kind of dicey, and you have to try to explain it and say, no, okay, it says this, but really, for example, if you're going with this sort of supernatural thief thing, you kind of got to sell it to them. Say, hey, look at these abilities and look how they read. And that reading isn't just fancy words. It really means hide in shadows versus hiding behind something. You really got to sell that. It's not, the rules don't make it particularly clear if you're going to do that. But some stuff like just using ascending armor class, that's an easy fix. If you want to use something like target 20, super easy. I don't know about the wisdom and intelligence modifiers mattering. That doesn't seem to me like the kids would care. Like, what do you care? If your wisdom intelligence modifiers matter for if you're a cleric or wizard, that to me almost feels like more something that they want. I can't imagine somebody, I never would have thought going from system to system, like, no. I need my intelligence to to factor in for my spell casting. It's like, who cares? I don't care. So it almost seems like more of a GM thing. But I don't know. But it's interesting. But, it seems like, at least at the moment, Shadow Dark, right? And to make a short story long, try Shadow Dark. And I suppose there's other ones, 5 Against the Darkness or something like that. I forget. That might be another one. But I think that if I would just, I would just say, let's try it. Let's see how it goes. And then just give them ascending armor class and use the target 20 kind of thing, if you need to. And Brian says, maybe next time you'll estimate me. Exactly. Don't underestimate. I really think that's, I feel like that's just, I should just record myself saying, don't overthink it. And because I think it just comes up all the time. In the video from, what was it, Wednesday, when I was talking about hex crawls, saying, hey, don't overthink it. We overthink it. We got to say, no, we got to do this, got to do that for reason X, reason Y. And part of me says, like, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just try it. It'll be okay. There's plenty of things going on. You're all right. You don't need to overthink it. But I think as a community, we tend to overthink things. I can't say that you can't go on my channel and find many a stream where I will think the crap out of something. Cybersaw says, I don't see the point of playing Shadow Dark when Castles and Crusades exist. Well, they're different, right? Castles and Crusades, you're getting a lot crunchier. Castles and Crusades, if I'm remembering correctly, right, that's AD&D or 2nd edition AD&D that they're kind of working off of. Shadow Dark is going to be quite a bit less crunchy than that, though maybe they're getting there. I don't know about on the crunchy level, but it's in terms of the subsystems they're building out. It seems like that some of the things they're doing, they're kind of building up these different areas if you want them in terms of some extra kind of rules heft. Yes, the OSR is definitely a community of overthinkers. Frederick says, give them one shot with Zen Fantasy. Yeah, so the Zen Fantasy, that's one of the why am I forgetting the name? Like the Frederick's friend who does the space gamer stuff. The only issue I have with the Zen Fantasy, not an issue, I haven't looked at the Zen Fantasy in particular, but those games that Frederick's friend Conrad and those guys work on is they feel very kind of board gamey, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's definitely a different vibe than I think people are coming from when they're coming from 5th edition. Though, there's not enough context here because I can't tell from this, like, are the kids watching Critical Role? And so that's a big, or a different actual player. Somebody says, no, that's where their influences are coming from. Or are they playing a lot of 5e, or is this person just afraid? Because like I said, if they don't have any experience role playing, you're giving them their first experience. Therefore, you're going to be setting the tone for the next games they play. But I'm not sure. But it seems like if he's looking for 5e leaning towards OSR, then yeah, right now Shadow Dark is kind of the hotness. Unless you want to do Dolmen Wood, which I guess is really more or less BX with some stuff in a setting that people love. It seems cool. I just haven't really read too much of it, so I can't say. But people really like Dolmen Wood for the setting, and I know they tweak the rules from OSC. I don't think it's very different, but they've got some little extra stuff in there. But I don't think it addresses, if their core things are really about some of those things, I don't think the Dolmen Wood stuff really addresses it. Frederick says that CNC is a bit faster play than AD&D. Well, I imagine if it's, as Frederick mentions, a little bit light, then yeah, it's going to be faster. Though, AD&D, once you get internalized, and I think another thing is, the I don't have as much patience for that now as maybe I did, or it's just maybe I'm just out of the habit. Like I probably could get back into playing something like AD&D, but I don't know. But I often find that the extra crunch isn't giving me a whole lot. And if you can get there 90% there, but be something, it's kind of like that. Well, I could do things with coin weight or I could do things with slot, but if slot is a lot easier for folks and it's, 80% of the way, whatever amount of, I don't know, quote unquote realism or whatever you want. If you go, slot, you can do slot or you can do coin weight, you can do something else. Well, coin weight was kind of the more original one. And you can really measure things down, measure things down to the coin and stuff in terms of like, okay, you can get really kind of granular. That's great. But you can also do something like slot encumbrance. And yeah, it's not as granular as the coin weight, but if the slot encumbrance kind of gets you there and saves everybody some time and energy, then is it worth doing the coin weight just to say you're doing it? I don't know. I tend to think no these days. Brian says, a game for kids must be able to survive when 99% of the rules get ignored. Probably depends on the age of the kids. But yeah, you want something that's pretty flexible. I mean, that's really you as the GM, right? Are you going to be, because most of the time with the rules, unless you have kids who are trying to do things and maybe against each other, I don't know, or get jealous of each other doing things, in which case they're kind of, what's the word, sort of telling on each other in terms of, hey, they did that and they shouldn't have worked, or that did that. Usually it's used, as long as you and the GM are okay with the futzing part, or just, we got it wrong, but whatever, then I feel like that's all right. All right, so Rule Cyclopedia, how to use errata. I don't really worry about errata. I don't. I'll look it up if it's super important, but usually the Rule Cyclopedia is just one of the things I look at to try to figure out what I want to do. Which GM tools do you use for content generation or inspiration? By Dan_the_German. That might be interesting. I'll be curious about that. Dan the German asks, which GM tools do you use for content creation or inspiration? Hi, all. Hello, Dan the German. I'm not referring to any apps, VTTs, or digital tools for online games, but rather tools, tables, methods, ideas, what have you. Which, parenthetically system agnostic, tools are you using for inspiration or putting adventures, campaigns, or sessions together? Any books, random tables, cards, etc. that you recommend, or that you can recommend? Any RPGs that stand out with great tables or ideas like adventure generators? For example, I have the Campaign Creator card deck, as well as the Story Engine deck, as well as Dangerous Destination book from Nord Games. I use them sporadically when I need some inspiration or ideas. I don't know anything about any of those. Well, I think I've seen the Story Engine deck. I don't think I have that one. That's the only one I've heard of specifically. Brian says, people always say we tried playing D&D and had no idea what the rules were. The game was just straight up evocative enough. Yeah, totally. I mean, and here's the, this is where the internet kind of gets you kind of in trouble, because really the internet and getting into the wider world is where you're going to get people that care about that, and not only care about it for their own games, but for some reason need to care about it for your game, when the reality is none of that stuff matters. And one of the things that I think is part of that age of innocence that shrinks for people because you end up getting on the internet faster is that none of that stuff matters. I think that's one of the things of growing up as a kid when I did is, yes, you could find zines. I don't know where those zines were. A lot of them, magazines. I mean, there was definitely Dragon magazine when I was growing up, but it wasn't like you could get it everywhere. And certainly more, the more specialized gaming journals and zines and stuff, they were not in my field of vision, even remotely. That's something where you have to like kind of know somebody, or you go to maybe find it at the Complete Strategist somewhere and you glom onto it. But, it's really kind of beyond your thing. So your world is just you and your friends doing stuff and having fun. And maybe you compare it, what you're doing, to some other kids at your school or someone that's doing stuff. And that's kind of it. So you just get to be in your own world and play. And you don't get to worry about this is proper and this isn't. Like you get these, pardon my French, these what word should I use? Jerks, I guess, that you find on the internet that will try to shut down conversations on philosophical grounds. No, I will not consider that rule because it comes from a game that is not, branded OSR or something. And it's like, who cares? I don't play my games to try to win some philosophical contest. I play them and have fun. And if something from a World of Darkness game or a Powered by the Apocalypse game or Fate or a board game or whatever is going to help me have fun and do something to help my game, then then why not check it out? I don't need you, internet guy or gal, to protect me from some kind of impure OSR thought. It's stupid. Frederick says there's always Mork Borg and its spinoffs. There is always Mork Borg and its spinoffs. It is nice that Mork Borg, you get this sort of whole alternative universe of stuff. And I guess also Mothership would qualify, right? I mean, Mork Borg is fantasy if you're into fantasy, but then you also have Mothership, which I guess is sci-fi, though. I think at least people do run kind of science fantasy stuff with Mothership, but Mothership I haven't really had a chance to delve into yet. I still need to do that. Hey, Fluffy the Griffin says, people get oddly tribal about everything, even games. Yeah, I mean, almost especially games. And the thing is that annoys me is like, it's not even about the game. It's like this, like there's some threshold or no, you're on the other side of some invisible line. And by the way, like the OSR doesn't even have a hard definition. So who is one person to say what is on the right side of the OSR, what the OSR even means, and put something, and then to say like, you shouldn't talk about that here because it doesn't align with my idea of the values of the OSR or something. It's just like, it's 7 degrees of dumb. Probably more than that. Matt says, remember playing a British game called Dragon Warriors in economics in 1987? Whoops, I missed the end of the comment. Oh, they deleted it. Oh no, Matt, no! I wanted to know about Dragon Warriors. All right, so back to this Reddit post. So GM tools and recommendations. So Atronarch, is that the Atronarch? I don't know. It's a tome of, it could be the Tome also, the Tome of Adventure Design, and also the Book of Lost tables, which they've linked. I don't know who makes the Book of Lost tables. Waiting for the Clouds also mentions Tome of Adventure Design, which you can find. I went through the app. There's an app of Tome of Adventure Design that I went through quite a while ago now. The Tome of World Building I think just came out, right? I think, or is that an older one? I think that's where it came out. I don't know. The Nomicon is also mentioned. Staffordshire Company Works of John Williams. I guess it's a reference for historical structures. Brian O'Mars uses Rando. I don't know what Rando is. I guess we could take a look at it. It seems like he made it, I'm guessing. Because he says the website is randobrine.dev, and this username is Brine on Mars. Well, you can check it out just in case. Eric Vulgaris, who I think he's a YouTuber type, isn't he? Didn't I look at streams of him at some point? Maybe he doesn't do it anymore. Mentions Perchance. Perchance is good. Sean F. Smith uses a system that they call Overdrawn Draft, and there's links to an article, which maybe we can go read the article. Whoops. What am I doing? All right, we got that. Let's see. Space Drift mentions books and movies. Vino Azulman links to some an implied setting, OD&E implied setting PDF. Any dice for math. And a thing called, I don't know, something in an RPG library called, I don't know, for towns. Cairn 2E for their stuff. D30 Sandbox Companion, dressings and things, Worlds Without Number. Those are good ones too. All right. Ryan Smith says Raging Swan Press has so much. Mine already been said. I did not hear Raging. I don't know Raging Swan Press. What is Raging Swan Press? Wow, how did it end up being way down there? Okay, Raging Swan Press. Games set in a richly detailed, immersive world are better than games that are not. Okay, so let's see. Well, we'll just start here since we're here. They do lots of biome-based random tables and stuff. Ah, I see. All right, so let's just see what they got. OSR GM resources. So they've got the Citadel on the Wilderlands. Okay, so it's definitely there. I think, is it just something everyone has to do is do their own keep on the Borderlands? Should I do one? Castle on the, I don't know even what to call it. Castle on the cliff. Ovaltine Patrol is familiar with their Raging Swan from their first edition Pathfinder stuff. Aha. Well, let's see. Is that where they got their start, Ovaltine Patrol, or is that just where you got in? Mark Morrison mentions they have a lot of free stuff. Well, if we have some, if we can find a free thing, I'm happy to look at it. So they have, okay, hold on. They have Shadow to keep on the Borderlands. They have Citadel on the Wilderlands. Oh, that's a player's guide. I guess maybe that's different. Dunstone, Citadel. I mean, they definitely have a lot. I don't know about these cover images, and it's not even just that this red on black, which I think has a certain kind of appeal in a way, but it's not easy to read. And the type on the actual, especially me with my, I know I could put my glasses on, but man, the type on the site is small, and then the black on the red with that font doesn't exactly pop really hard. So not exactly easy to see things, but yeah, they got a lot of stuff. They do have a lot. Where's the free? And I don't mean that just because I don't mean that to be flippant. I'm just trying to find something I can maybe look at right now. Can you sort by free? So that's the essential. Now let's do all, okay, all OSR. All right, that's where we are. Okay. Now it doesn't look like they have any freebies. Brian Smith says, I don't think the main text is black and red. No, I'm not suggesting that for the book. Just the titles. It's just when I'm reading through this list, between the tiny text that's on white and then the red text on the black on the images, it just is not it's not quite. And I do have some, it probably doesn't help that I have some glare on my monitor it's actually a kind of a sunny day outside. It's just not as easy to read as maybe I would like. I don't see anything that's free. So, yeah, I don't not see this one. See, look at that. See the yellow. Oops. See how much easier it is to read that than it is to read this. I mean, look at this. James Miscellany, Dungeons and Backdrops, Raging Swan, and then you look at the one next to it, which is Towns and Cities, and it's just, it ain't easy, man. It ain't easy. We got bundles of stuff. Is that where this is? There a? Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, cool. Well, check out Raging Swan Press. I guess maybe at some point I'll be able to get something I can look at in a deeper manner. I was hoping they'd have something free, but they don't have anything that I could find. And they don't have to have, I'm not suggesting they need to have something free, just for my purposes today. Oh, on drive-through. All right, well, I'll have to come back to that. We'll come back to that on another time. So let's go back and look at Rando. Oh my gosh, Rando. And you're doing gray on gray. Please, folks. I'm not colorblind or anything. I'm not asking for much, but you could go with a little higher contrast, because the sort of darkish gray, and then it's a kind of a lighter gray, and then you go for a green that's not that. Just do better with your. I don't need. It doesn't have to be my. You don't have to make my eyes bleed with brightness and whatever, but you can just make it a little bit more contrasty. I mean, I don't even know. I would imagine they have not checked any kind of actual color blindness thing for the conscious for that, but I can't imagine this would pass anything. Doesn't have anything to do with the content, but if it's a pain for people to use or read it or make it legible, then people aren't going to use it. So this looks like maybe you just randomly generate a page. I'm guessing if I hit this again, I would get another one, but we get some names, I guess, or a character: Tybalt, Torilla, or Toria, Carrie, quote unquote, Jin, Boodle. I don't know what the brackets are for. Are we supposed to pick one of those three? Jin, Boodle, Seer, Vigilante, Maverick. Those are cool. Belief, Solace, and Stillness. That's cool. They have some sparks. I guess their ideas. I don't know if this is. I'm unfamiliar with this layout here, so I'm not sure if this is. There's in some kind of existing framework that's supposed to build on, but you have sparks, so you have actual. So under the heading of sparks, we've got sparks, blissful, golden, necromancer, and justice. So I think these are really just, hey, get your inspiration going. Do any of those words or combination of those words speak to you? Then use that. And then we have the next one's threat, ancient curses, blighting lance. That's cool. So, what's going on? There's a threat. And then if you need a complication, you have sacred grove is disputed. We also have what I actually is really cool is you get a tarot card, and we got death though upside down, and I'm so I never knew a ton about tarot, but the little knowledge I had is pretty much gone. I don't know which underneath that is supposed to pertain to the tarot card or just be another thing, but it says resistance to change, fear of transformation, stagnation. I think that sounds like pretty much the tarot card kind of thing. You do have a weather if you need it. Wonderful rain, fog, or snow. It's wonderful, which is kind of cool. Hey, Terrence. We've got I don't know what the down arrow is. Maybe if we need a random direction or hit location. Are we fighting Modrons that their hit location is a hexagon? I'm not sure. And we have a yes plus if we needed a oracle. We have some 6-sided dice if we needed a 3d6. And we have a situation where we have some loot. So 11 coins in a silver snuff box if we were at an apothecary, or I guess something of that nature. We've got a tiger lily, which I guess signifies wealth, pride, and confidence. If we just needed something that you found, you might have found a spool of twine, a rusted metal bucket in their pocket. What's in your pocket? What's in its pockets? Brass pen nib, trade, bundles of fine woolen cloth, magic, a bag of infinite manure, useful for campfires and kind of tricks, I suppose. Potion, a swirling pinkish liquid that smells of fresh grass and cinnamon that makes the target grow gills. All right. So there you go. So that's cool. It's kind of specific, not in a terrible way. I wish I knew a little bit more about what the setting and kind of framework this is kind of based off of. But we have we can go to the home website for the creator, but there's nothing here to really, and a little more explanation might help. Also, I still don't quite know why not just give us one name. Why do I need Tybalt, Taria, and Carrie Jin Boodle? I'm not sure, but there you go. Oh, I'll post this. Let me post this in the chat before I forget. This is the Rando site. It's cool. I like the way it looks, and I like its overall design. That the lack of what's the word I'm looking for? Contrast on the colors is kind of a little bit aggravating, a little annoying. But other than that, Fluffy has several tarot decks. The wife's big in it. Yeah, tarot's fun. I mean, I wouldn't use it. I'm not into it in terms of like let me guide my life planning with tarot. But I'm fascinated by them. I think they're really kind of cool. Oh, Terrence got a really cute mouse tarot from Temu. Nice. That's nice. All right, so that was Rando. So we got Rando out of the way. Now, next up, this article on Medium. Close that. Overdrawn draft. With this tool, you'll never run out of ideas. It's by Sean F. Smith, who I think I've seen on various Discords. Sometimes you are caught. Oh, here, let me share the blog post if you want to follow along at home. What is this called? Overdrawn draft. Okay. Quotes. There we go. All right, Overdrawn Draft. With this tool, you'll never run out of ideas, by Sean F. Smith, from a few years ago, August 31st, 2021. Sometimes you are caught with the need for a brand new investigation without lead time to read and personalize a new module. You could make something up in a rush, but without special tools, it is easy to default to cliche and stereotype. There are tools for randomly generated content, but they often end up as Mad Libs that resemble B-movie Clue sequels. Don't underestimate Clue. I kind of wish they would have made some sequels to that. The Overdrawn Draft method. You'll need a random oracle device, tarot cards, story dice, ungulate entrails, and a grasp of the acronym SPEARS. So SPEARS stands for Site, a location for your investigation. Persons, the allied forces involved. Entity, the spark that sets off the mystery, usually something supernatural or extra normal. Action, what happens when those two interact. Result, what happens next and what will continue with that intervention. And then finally, sense, an underlying theme or sense of story beneath this whole thing. So, spears. Matt asks if anyone used story dice. Yes, I have used story dice, and I even did a little bit of a video where I looked at story dice. Again, this is kind of I feel like it's going back in the archives a little bit, but yeah, I think story dice are cool. Anything that really, just sparks your imagination. I mean, that's really what it is, right? What sparks your imagination? For Sean F. Smith, setting up this acronym and then filling each one of those is going to do it. For some folks, just getting one of these might be enough. Some folks might need more than that. And tarot cards, story dice, all those things, they're just trying to give you that whatever's going to give you that like impulse, and suddenly get your brain to kind of click over and go, I see something. And yeah, story dice work, and there's tons of different ones. Those Rory's, or the Rory's, I guess, story dice. I'm thinking of the Rory's story cubes, which is the ones that I have that I've used before. And what's neat about them is there's just a bunch of different genres, and you can even mix and match if you want to have fun with them. But I know that other folks put together, there's different, brands and whatever of story dice. Terrence says, the only story my dice tell is how I miss attacks and fail saves. Sure do, Terrence. Hey, Jason, welcome aboard. All right, rather than rolling a die, or drawing a card for each heading, you instead roll or draw 9 symbols total and then draft from this selection. You cannot use the same symbol twice. It's a case of looking over the symbols and deciding which of these is the site, and so on. This process of drafting is key for making the whole thing feel coherent. So this is sort of interesting because it's rather similar to that, I guess we say the kind of Tetris style of generating hexes that I do, where you roll randomly for the type and shape, but then you place it on your map, and therefore you can kind of try to fit things together in a coherent way that you might not get if you're just randomly generating one thing at a time. Taken together, you can boil it down into a hook and a horrid truth and apply an investigation structure of your choice on top. So here's a worked example. 9 cards of the major arcana are drawn: the Sun, Strength, the Fool, the Moon, the Lovers, Temperance, the Chariot, the High Priestess, and Death. So sight, they put down the High Priestess and they pick a nunnery. Let's see, I wish they would have written out the things. Persons, they pick the Fool, so pilgrims. The entity is death, so ghosts. Action, they pick temperance, and they translate that to a mellowing or lessening of the pilgrim's souls. Ooh, a mellowing. A mellowing sounds kind of nice, but a lessening, less so. A result is the chariot. The pilgrims are taken to another realm, having been weakened. And then finally, sense is the moon, a reflected inversion of their piety remains. That's pretty neat. That's very evocative. And they turn that into a hook and a hard truth. The hook is: an acquaintance went on a pilgrimage 2 weeks back. She has yet to return. This is merely one case amongst many this month. And the horrid truth: ghosts at the pilgrimage site have woken. Why? Perhaps a broken or stolen relic, and have been assaulting the pious through grievous dreams and visions. The pilgrim spirits are stolen away, and their bodies charged with revenant energies and a hellish inversion of their devout former lives. So that's kind of fun. Other applications. This draw 50% too many and draft from that procedure can easily be applied to other systematic game elements. Grapes for regional description, geography, religion, achievements, political, economy, social structures, 5-room dungeons, etc. The possibilities are considerable. So there you go. Terrence says, high-grade soul mellowing, halfling's leaf. There you go. So yeah, that's fun. That is fun. And there are a bunch of these acronyms going around. I hadn't heard of grapes before. I think I'd heard of a different one, but that one works just as well, right? So you're, geography, religion, just you're just sort of picking these high-level parts of a region, and then you fill them out a little bit, or rolling. I think the idea of overdrafting or drafting more than you need and picking from them is kind of good, because you feel like you get a little bit. You're not exactly tied in because you have some extras, but you're still constrained. And I think often that constraining of choices is where your creativity comes in. And when you say, okay, I'm only going to use these, whatever I picked, and maybe I don't like them offhand, but I get to fiddle with them and find something that works for me, I think is where you can have a lot of fun. And I think that's where a lot of this stuff comes from, is when you you use some kind of tool to generate something, and then you kind of say to yourself, all right, I don't know what this thing is, but I'm going to use it. I just need to figure out how to take it, even if I don't really like it on its face, but I'm going to make something out of it. Okay. That was Overdrawn Draft. What's this one? So this was something for, I guess, for generating towns, called the Doomsday Book. I'll put this in the chat. This is definitely an old style looking website. All right, penned by. See, the thing is, I would squeeze the window, but I'm afraid, will it? Oh, it is squeezing. Great, because it was just they don't have any kind of width set. So, okay. The Doomsday Book, penned by Brandon Blackmore, based on medieval demographics made easy by S. John Ross. Here is subscribed the Inquisition of lands as the barons of the king have made inquiry into them. All right, so basically you fill out some stuff and then you can get all kinds of things out of it, which is very cool. So landmass, the population density of this kingdom, due to factors such as climate, geography, and political environment is... So you get barren, desolate, rocky, or kind of chilly, rocky, cool, dry, or swampy, or I don't know if it's and or, hilly, temperate, abundant, arable land, or fertile, warm, idyllic. So let's go with hilly, temperate. This kingdom occupies... Yeah, see, I'm just going to use their numbers. Is it changing? Oh, it is changing. Okay, so because I don't have offhand what kind of hexes I'm using in terms of kilometers. This kingdom occupies 780 kilometers squared, one hex each 30 kilometers across, and roughly 779 kilometers squared in area. Roughly 43% of this is arable land, or 336 kilometers square. The remaining 444 kilometers square is divided among wilderness, rivers, lakes, and the like. This is all great. This tends to be just more granular than I need. It's cool to have, and when you have this generator like it, you can easily do it. But I don't really know. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't even know what I would do with most of this information. Like, nobody is going to ask me, or I'm never going to need to know, I don't think, the size in kilometers squared of the kingdom, other than for doing calculations like this. And then it's like, I don't, great. I mean, it would be just as easy to say that, like, hey, if they just said, hey, a little bit more than half is, or a little bit less than half is arable, and a little bit more than half, just give me that would probably work just as well. So now we get on the population. This kingdom's population is approximately 23,400 persons. And then we get some breakdown. 468 residents are isolated or itinerant. A little bit under 21,000 residents live in 47 villages. A little bit over 2,000 residents live in one town. And we don't have any cities, and we don't have any big cities. The average distance between villages is 4 kilometers. We don't have any towns. We don't have any cities, so none of that matters. We have no universities. We've got over 50,000 head of livestock, 35,000 fowl, and a little bit under 16,500 dairy and meat animals, which I guess is not the same as livestock. So sure. Oh, that's the breakdown, I'm guessing. Okay, I see. So the breakdown of livestock was that much in fowl, that much in dairy and meat. I got you. Now, about settlements, we get some language here. Large population centers of any scale are the result of traffic. Coastlines, okay, it's basically pretty general. The inhabitants of this kingdom have been building castles for the last 300 years. Oh no, there are approximately no standing fortifications in this kingdom. This doesn't make sense. I mean, I know this is being based off some kind of math. I don't care if you've had 300 years or not. 300 years seems like plenty of time to get some castles up. And especially when you're dealing with I mean, even in the dark ages, like the early Middle Ages or whatnot, there were a lot of castles, and people were putting up lots of castles. Not all of them of stone, lots of wood, things like that. But you're not getting zero, because where are people going when there's danger? Assuming this, let's say, is just historical Europe or somewhere where, like, when the Vikings come, or the I don't know, any of the peoples that would end up rampaging through or whatever reason, where are they going? There's nowhere. That's not right. You got 20,000 people and they don't have anywhere to go. There's no fortifications. That doesn't make sense at all. When it says to use this to generate your keep on the Borderlands, Haven on the Hex Edge. No, I got my own thing, Brian. Come on. I got my own thing. All right, we don't have any towns, but we do get a breakdown of all the things in the towns. Wow, this was revised in 2012. Whew. All right, so it's cool. It seems like there's some limits, but if you were looking for something to help lay out get some rough numbers, that's kind of based on some real. If you followed my other streams, I have something that's based not so much on the real, but I think gets you pretty close to at least kind of things that I'm looking for. You got that, but this was the Doomsday Book. And then we got where that was back to Raging Swan Press. Okay. All right. I'll leave these around in case I want to get to them later. So that's it for that. Well, that was weird because I didn't ask you to refresh Reddit. You just did that yourself. All right. I am not, you know what? I'm feeling good today, so I'm not going to touch do you let the creator of a game influence whether or not you play to support it? Player supported. Not touching that one today. All right, where's that gif of Mad Max saying bait? Not gonna be able to do it today. Sorry, pal. All right, this one might be good. So this one's got some comments. It's also slightly baitish, but we'll look at it. Why the system is so important. So this is from the RPG Gazette. Who is this by? Alex Serbin 02. Okay, but all right. So it's got some stuff going on. So I will link to it. We can give it a try. Fluffy the Griffins is 300 years, 1 brick per day, I guess. I mean, maybe. Or a Barsoom-like setting. No, they're definitely going for a European. Assuming you're talking about that kind of that Doomsday Book site. They're definitely going for a European kind of medieval fantasy. So no, not Barsoom, not anything weird. Or not weird, or just kind of with very different what's the word I'm looking for? Assumptions. Like they're going for. I'm not sure how they end up with 0 towns. It might just be a fluke of the math, but you have 20,000 plus people, and you're telling me there's not one town and there's not one fortress or stronghold of some kind. That's bonkers. Bonkers, I tell you. All right, so here this was posted by Serbin. Am I reading that correct? Serbin Ionita. Why did they put their name? I think their name. I mean, I suppose you could call it. There we go. Make it bigger. Wow, their name. They really don't. They don't want you to know their name. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip it says that this is a continuation of some ideas presented in another article. That's fine. It's whether a response to a different article about why system doesn't matter. Well, we'll check that article out afterwards. All right. Let's see. So different perspective to that other article. Well, we're going to read this one first, and then we can go to the other one. All right. The system is important, not just as a cookie cutter, but as something that defines your game. For the system provides the mechanical framework in which the story takes place. I'm going to jump the gun a bit and use Doobleman's terminology. Mechanics are not just tools for interaction, but narrative devices themselves, shaping the kind of experiences players have and the stories they construct in real time. Now, who is this Doobleman? Tayun, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Doobleman is an interactive storytelling and game studies researcher at Avans University of Applied Sciences, and he has a good paper on narrative game design that I used as a sort of foundation for this article. In this paper, he theorizes how mechanics are employed as storytelling devices and not merely gameplay limitation. He feels that mechanics guide player action and emergent narrative shape, and not merely serve as a vehicle for pre-authored story. Doubleman refers to games like Papers, Please and The Last of Us Left Behind that use mechanics to generate tension, build characterization, and present moral dilemmas, emphasizing that mechanics shape the narrative experience just as much as scripted content. Now, the one thing I'm going to say here, and I don't know, but those are video games. And I think video games, I don't know that we can use video games and the way mechanics work in video games with the way they work in tabletop role-playing games. But I'm not sure. Anyway, the author here goes on. For tabletop role-playing games, Doubleman's findings have immediate relevance. While video games implement mechanics as code, TTRPGs rely on interpretation and improvisation by the players. Game mechanics do not only dictate what players are able to do, they also dictate the types of narratives that emerge. Here's where the significance of the system is most keenly felt. By defining a set of possible actions, it defines the boundaries of what kind of stories can be told. A game that allows for in-depth interpersonal conflict mechanics, like Blades in the Dark, will tell fundamentally different stories from a game like D&D 5th edition, where conflict is often resolved through combat and spellcasting. Brian says Papers, Please is a board game, I think. Nope, it's a, unless there's a second one, unless there's something else. No, it was a video game where you play as a customs agent, unless I'm misremembering. It was a kind of an indie game. It was pretty big a few years ago, maybe even more than a few years ago now, I feel like. But yeah, it was a really fun kind of Steam game, sort of indie game. I don't know if it ever made it to consoles. The system also dictates the play flow. However, starting with 3rd edition D&D, for instance, a character's abilities are tightly coupled with combat utility, even more so in 4th edition. So the stories end up being about heroic action and empowerment. Burning wheels mechanics based on beliefs conversely encourage deep personal character development, contextualizing the game's emergent story in terms. Hold on, let me just. Yeah, what happened? So Fluffy says, "Papers, Please" is that game, isn't it? Yes, Papers, Please is that game where you're playing like a, and it has like a kind of like a, I don't know, pseudo-Soviet red block kind of thing to it, look and feel to it, where you're sort of you're at the border, and I think you're trying to stop. I forget exactly, but it's very much playing on that you're this cog in this sort of Cold War era machine. Okay, so back to this. Burning wheels mechanics based on beliefs, conversely, encourage deeply personal character development, contextualizing the game's emergent story in terms of internal conflict and growth. Similarly, Blades in the Dark reinforces its themes of gang politics and criminal heists, with flashback and stress mechanics that pressure players into making risky, bold choices. The game further supports its group-oriented storytelling through a communal crew sheet shared among all the players and managed together, which symbolizes their gang's resources, reputation, and status. This mechanism shifts the spotlight from character progression to advancement of the crew as a whole, imposing the values of teamwork, ambition, and increasing conflict within the underworld. Apocalypse World and its descendants also illustrate this principle with mechanics that push players into different choices and dramatic stakes and interpersonal drama as a major story driver. Mechanics control not just what the characters can do, but what the game incentivizes them to do in service of reinforcing the themes and tone of the setting. Returning to Horia's, which we haven't read yet, observation regarding 24XX, it's true enough that some modern systems are written more universally and they act as adaptable frameworks rather than as clearly specified rulebooks. But even in minimalist systems, the chosen mechanics still dictate play. A game constructed from a token economy, for example, encourages resource management and scarcity-driven decision-making, leading to emergent stories distinct from those of a game constructed from dice pool resolution. Even if the mechanics are minimal, they still guide the pacing of the game and influence what kind of stories emerge organically. The most important thing to remember here is that the system matters because it is the language that the game is speaking. Just as different languages shape how we express ideas, different systems shape how we experience and construct stories in play. With either rigid mechanical systems or flexible storytelling systems, the mechanics and rules shape the player's relationship to the world and the kinds of stories they can tell there. All right, so that's his. Whew. Glory to Arstotzka. There, yep, 11 years ago. See, I knew it was further along than I thought. Terrence says they just watched a video by a guy complaining that the 2024 D&D update upended his homebrew setting world building. They changed the cantrip list and upended his society. Well, I mean, but the thing is, this is what I don't understand about that, Terrence, and I guess I'll have to look for that person's video if I want to, is that you don't need to do all of it. Just because they changed the cantrip list doesn't mean you have to. So go back to your old cantrip list. Heck, customize the cantrip list in any way you want. I don't understand. I'd be more concerned about the actual mechanical stuff than the cantrip list. I mean, if unless there's some really game-breaking reasons, then just use the 2014 cantrip list or make your own cantrip list. How can that upend your whole thing? Just don't use it. Hand your players a piece of paper saying, oh, by the way, in this world, the cantrip list is X instead of Y. I don't know. I do not know. Okay. Now let's go to this one. Are they from the same thing? Oh wow, I guess they're dueling articles on the same blog. I don't think I've seen that before. There we go. Can I highlight the whole title? I go back and forth on this system. I think system does have some importance, but I think at the same time, the way people take systems and just twist them into whatever pretzels they want, kind of, sort of shows that maybe they're not, or how people will play different games with systems that, if you were to read some things, they're not intended to play this kind of game, and you see people playing those kind of games with them anyway. What do you know? What do I know? It's an interesting discussion, but it's not one that puts the fire in my belly or anything. Okay, so this was posted on February 10th. 2020. Okay, so also this year. I think that's a 5, not a 3, right? Or is it a? Okay, it is from this year. Cheers, I'm Horia Marchian. I'm sorry for the butchery I just did to your name, but you probably don't care about that. 2024 was an interesting year for me, RPG-wise. I got to find out exactly how little rules I need in a game to have fun, and found the system I intend to use as a catch-all generic option, let's say. You probably care about that, though. Let's see what's up. I used to be firmly into the system does matter side of the conflict, having one fundamental gaming route into the OSR and another into White Wolf's World of Darkness. I don't know what the C is, but anyway, World of Darkness games. Reckoning with the fundamental differences in scope between the two gaming paradigms was inevitably going to lead to the aforementioned conclusion. After all, one is procedural, randomized, and generates emergent narratives of conquest, and it's always some kind of conquest, in the words of Satir Brucato, quote, D&D is a war game in Tolkien's drag, end quote, or in Tolkien drag, not drag belonging to Mr. Tolkien, whereas the other is aesthetically minded, autorial, and tends to generate intrigues and dramas. It would make sense that the importance of system and mechanics would be a conclusion to reach, and to a large degree, I still support that viewpoint, just with significant caveats. Enter 2024 and my God's damned GM burnout. I paused the 3-year-long Vampire the Masquerade game I was running and took a few months break. After a month or two on the bench, enjoying a Demon the Fallen game ran by a good friend who has a YouTube channel, The Old Country, I took a few tentative steps back into the GM seat. Enter 2400 or 24XX. I've been staring sideways at the full 2400 collection, which goes for a few bucks on itch, for a while, when some kind of newbie friends approached me for a game. The rule set was simple and smooth. They wanted a steampunk game, which I hadn't done before, and I said it should be a simple enough affair. Besides, I was in the mood for some Abney Park. I don't know Abney Park. I'm fine, by the way. Thanks for asking. I guess they're is that a band? Hey, Ian. Oh, wait a minute. So Chris said, this take an adventure played with Mithras will be fundamentally different than one played with Shadowdark. I guess that, yeah, I think, yeah. So the other article would argue that, yes, Shadowdark and Mithras, since their rules circumscribe and emphasize different things, that were you to take an adventure and play it in those two different systems, you would end up with different things, which is probably true, but there's probably more going on there, right? It's one of those things that can get kind of complicated, right? Where I think there's maybe a lot going on. So I think it would be an interesting thing to do would be to take a module or an adventure and run it in some different systems and see what happens when you take something obviously doing whatever conversion stuff you need to, and just running it with, like, keep on the Borderlands, for example. Run it with OSE, which would be kind of the default. Okay, run it with the Mithras. Run it with D&D 5th edition. Run it with Blades in the Dark or something, or whatever. Whatever fantasy. I think it's Blades in the Dark's already fantasy, right? Whatever like that, and see what different things emerge. You probably will find differences, even with the same players, maybe even with the same kind of characters. But I don't know that that's all due to system, or I don't feel strongly about that. Okay, so back to this article. What happened was I was floored at how adaptable the rule set is. By leaning into the abstract capabilities of this hobby and using things like the simple chain of the basic 7 dice set, it generates a framework basic enough to be understood by anyone in a few minutes, while robust enough to support adding a few rules or tweaks to make anything you want to try with it. Pick it up for yourself and see. It's free. You only roll when there's a risk, but you're already doing that. GM describes the risk. What happens if you fail? You roll a die. Die 1 and 2 are bad results. 3 and 4 are mixed, or succeed at cost. 5 and above are good. The more skilled you are, the bigger the die, up to D12. If you're helped, you get another die, typically a D6. If you're somehow at disadvantage, you roll a D4. Yes, no full success here. Add some equipment management, and there you go. There's your RPG. There's something to be said about the similarity between this and the FKR School of Gaming, but that's a story for another time. Suffice it to say, 24XX is somewhat of a last stop before landing in full free Kriegspiel role-playing territory. I've been running that steampunk game for 7 months now, and we've recently hit a peak in the story. We're past half of the campaign as I've sort of planned it. I've been running this halfway between a vampire game, like an autorial story in which I've come up with missions that the characters undertake and events they go through between set missions, while retaining the sandbox freedom and faction-led world building typical in old-school sandboxes, which is a light, fresh, novel take on preparing games. It does allow me to disregard all the rules and meta plot baggage of the OSRs and World of Darknesses of the world, and to therefore stay focused on my vision for the game, which is great. I'm not sure what rules and metaplot baggage most OSR games have. I can imagine World of Darkness might have some, but what OSR games have a bunch of rules and metaplot baggage? I mean, if you're playing something like BX, there's not any, or Cairn, or there's not that many rules. I don't know. And you could disregard them anyway, but I don't know. But anyway, they like something even simpler, which fair enough. I also ended up publishing my first game using the 24XX SRD, which is free. My game is a love letter to my favorite horror media, namely the Resident Evil series and the Dead films. You can check it out, link below if you want. Maybe that'll jolt them into updating it after playtests and reviews. What does this have to do with game system design? However, my biggest takeaway from the experience of engaging with 2400 and its multitudinous hacks and subgames is this. The more you simplify the rule set, the clearer your, let's call it GM gut, if you will, guides you to what you want to do. It's been discussed to death at this point. Simpler rule sets give you more freedom. Yeah, we get it. However, there's a follow-up to that, which touches upon the question that newer GMs end up asking. Okay, but what do I rely upon to adjudicate the game? And 2400 answers this by leaning into the FKR. You rely upon your brain and the fact that it's your setting. You trust yourself while free-falling. Secondly, I've come to see that the more you simplify rule sets, the more they come together. Abandoning the GNS or other classifications of game systems, the more you simplify, the more pure story ends up being generated at the table. And finally, I've come to reevaluate my premises pertaining to the fundamentals of the hobby. We are, perhaps involuntarily, taught that the system an RPG employs is its base, that there is nothing underneath it, and that it is this foundation in particular that defines the game more than anything else. And yet, by stripping systems further and further, again, see FKR for the logical conclusion of this undertaking, we find that system is not the base from which RPGs take their essence, but one incarnation that guides their evolution from a common shared universal imagination of mankind. If I were feeling mystically inclined, I'd call it God or Chaos or Kia or whatever else strikes your fancy, the collective unconscious, if you're into that. Luckily, I'm not. So does system matter? I mean, yes, it does, but not the same way it used to. It matters not as something that defines your game and ultimately your experience at the table, but as a different cookie cutter shape to cut your dough, another channel for your pure story to flow through, or another square in the grid we use to look at reality. It matters insofar as any tool matters, but the system is not the game. Now, do you care about it? And there's it. I think that it's almost like, I don't know if they're saying it doesn't matter, because obviously it mattered for them. And there's certainly a part where they're saying, look, if you take the system down to its barest essentials, you're removing all of that, the stuff that makes it matter. And then you can kind of do whatever you want with it. I don't know that they're really saying anything but if you have more, because obviously the cookie cutter analogy is strange, because if you do cut this thing out with a cookie and presuming that dough you're playing in is the shape you've made, then that shape does dictate, right, the game, because you've created a particular shape and now you're inside that shape playing. Obviously, the less you're, the less you're constraining yourself because you're going simpler and simpler, then you could say you're playing with almost the whole sheet of cookie dough, if you will, as opposed to one Christmas cookie shape, a cutter thing shaped like a cat or like a snowman or a Christmas tree or whatever. Adam says they must mean freeing up brain power for GM stuff like descriptions and what's happening. I guess. Look, I've been beating this drum for a while. When you one of the nice things about kind of the OSR and obviously even more rules light systems in your average OSR game is that you're just you're just left with less. Excuse me. There's less stuff there's less stuff to confine you, and I think the further you get, I tend to think that some people are going to revel in the confines. Heck, I just said not thinking long ago that, necessity is the mother of invention kind of thing. But I think you can also get to a point where like trying to fit everything you want to do, like, if I got to do this and I got to fill out a whole spreadsheet worth of crunch to make this thing happen, or I can just play really loosey-goosey. One's going to take me 2 hours of work. One's going to take me 5 minutes of work. Which one do I want to do? I'll do the 5 minutes of work. And if the 5 minutes of work gets me 80% of the way that doing the 2 hours of super crunchy, going through all these tables and doing whatever it does, then do I need to do that? Right? But if I'm playing, I don't know, insert some super crunchy game, well, then I got to do that. But I could just do this and I can get kind of the same effect because I can steer, or we collectively as a table can steer the game to be similar to that super crunchy game with the same things. Like I ran a BX game where we ended up being a lot about intrigue and stuff, and we didn't have burning wheel intrigue mechanics or whatever, but we didn't have anything stopping us either, right? We did that. And then, but you could also say that, well, BX doesn't have a bunch of stuff there, so either that's good or that's bad. Where something like burning wheel that's got all this stuff in there, it's going to deliver that kind of experience. But if you start to move outside that, you're going to start to bump up against the borders of your cookie cutter. I don't know. It's interesting. Chris says that not all systems fit particular genres. Well, yes and no. You say that, but then people will make it work. And I'm not going to tell somebody, and nobody should tell somebody that if they took, say, 5th edition and were running a present-day detective game, that it doesn't work because it's 5th edition. Like, people will make systems work with anything, and they're driven to do it because, I don't know, either they really love the system or their players don't want to learn another system. So I feel like I would say that systems aren't always the same efficient in different genres. And I mean efficient in terms of what you have to change, what you have to prep, what you have to do. So something like 5th edition, yeah, you can make it work. I have no doubt you can make it work in any genre you want, but there are games that are more efficient at doing it. But some people don't mind that kind of work. Some people they'll do that. They'll say, I'm going to spend a month and I'm going to tweak 5th edition into, I don't know, whatever, into a, some kind of anime-inspired high school romance game. And it's like, fine, you can do it. I have no doubt you can do it. But there probably is some game out there that is going to be much more efficient at that, at least out of the box, than 5th edition. All right. Well, that's been an hour. Did I link this one in? I think I did. So we got 2 little points of view on the same blog about systems and mattering. I don't know if they disagree as much as they maybe. They weren't written really to oppose each other. It's interesting. It's one of those arguments that's kind of fun to have, but doesn't really matter too much. Like a lot of these philosophical ones, I kind of feel like we get wrapped up in this too much because the bottom line is just practicality is just the practical things of running a game. And it tends to be where the rubber hits the road, tends to be where a lot of philosophical stuff kind of just falls short or just has to fall away. If you're all about, I don't make any decisions at the table. This is all about whatever, the world is the world. And once I get to the table, the world is set. It's like, what happens when you get somewhere that you didn't, what do you do? some point you just got to do something. What about if we're playing and I left my map at home? What do you do? Like, what do you do? Or, oh, you're a big, you got to balance the heck out of things before you run it in 5th edition. What happens when you left your notes? Oops. What do you do? I don't know. You gotta, and I much rather, I think the practical stuff to me ends up being much more interesting than a lot of this philosophy stuff. But yeah, I think as any sort of hobby matures, people like to get into the philosophy, and I do too. I do too. I think sometimes we get too fixated on it, I guess. All right, Chris says, so would not a game be the key fundamental that drives story and mechanics? No, I don't. Would not genre. Would not genre be the key fundamental that drives story and mechanics? But the thing is, genre can change, right? Genre is not static. And I think, like, if you're playing a Call of Cthulhu game, not that it's going to change. I was going to say, you don't go from sci-fi to fantasy or fantasy to sci-fi, but you could, and people have. People end up going. I mean, when I was in a long-running game, sci-fi game, I joined it. It was a sci-fi game, but the game had begun as a fantasy game, and the genre had totally morphed from fantasy guys in some prime material plane to spacefaring empires by the time I got there. And to the people who've been playing since the beginning, they saw this whole arc of going from one there to another, and for them it took years and years. But I mean, all you gotta do is take a Barrier Peaks expedition to Barrier Peaks kind of thing, and just tweak it so the ship can fly, or later on you get Spelljammer, and then you can end up in space. And why not end up, oh, look, I got this traveler book, or oh, look, we used to, gosh, when I was in that campaign, we would buy all these different source books for different games, a lot of Rifts stuff, a lot of these things that were sort of genre crossing. Steampunk itself is kind of a genre cross. I mean, you could go, you see this stuff with Call of Cthulhu, with all these different versions of the game and different things. I mean, yeah, they're all kind of still cosmic horror as kind of a genre, but you can go from sort of fantasy or historical fantasy cosmic horror to modern day cosmic horror to Victorian kind of cosmic horror. I don't know. Everything can I think things are a lot more fluid. We say, like, our game is this. It's like, it's this right now, but all it takes is something goofy, like a weird wish spell. I wish we were a million years in the future, something like that. And then you're like, oh gosh, now we're in sci-fi land, and now dragons are piloting starships, and I don't know, whatever's going on. We've crossed over into Shadowrun. Chris says, I used to say, like, Tales of Argosa and Hyperborea as examples for a sword and sorcery setting. Those are good. But I think you can run a sword and sorcery setting with a lot of different games. Like I said, it's that efficiency, right? Hyperborea and I don't know Tales of Argosa very well. Hyperborea is definitely geared towards playing sword and sorcery. So I think in terms of efficiency for that genre, it's high. But I think you can take something like BX or OD&D, and you can get to sword and sorcery, I think, in pretty short order. I don't think they're very far removed. And if you had something else, it escapes me whatever game you're playing now, I think you could take it to sword and sorcery if you want. And I think you could also take Hyperborea, or, and I'm assuming Tales from Argosa, and go in the other direction. And suddenly go, okay, we're going to do Hyperborea, but we're going to establish strongholds, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do other stuff. And I think you can do that too, right? I think there's some flexibility, but there is an efficiency, which I wouldn't deny. Some systems are made and they kind of streamline a certain genre, and they're going to be maybe, again, more efficient for that. But you can do other things with them, and sometimes you do them just because this is what happens in your game as things evolve. Like, you got to, well, what do I do when I'm super high level? Maybe I don't know if I have Hyperborea somewhere. I don't know what Hyperborea says if you're kind of, when your adventuring days are over, what do you do? But then you get some table that's like, hey, we want to keep playing, but we heard about domain stuff because from this, that, or the other. And it's like, well, are we going to dump Hyperborea to go play Castles and Crusades or something? Like, no, we are going to tweak Hyperborea to give us this experience kind of thing that we want. Right? So, efficiency, I kind of feel like that's a good word. More efficient, but you can make things happen. I think, and as GMs, to me, that's kind of some of the fun stuff. It's like, hey, we start off with our system here, and then the game starts to move, hopefully organically, in different directions. And then can we, how do we keep our games moving to keep up with what the party's doing? And I feel like that's where a lot of even house rules a lot of things come from, right? There's obviously some house rules are about how we want the game to run, but other house rules are really just trying to keep our game in sync, keep the mechanics of the game in sync with what's happening at the table. All right, this was good. I'm glad folks showed up. Thanks everyone for all the comments. I got a jet because I got to get ready to go to Fogo de Chao tonight for a Meatmas celebration. I've been saving myself all day. I've been holding my appetite so I can unleash it in full upon the meat heavy platters at Fogo de Chao. So I'm looking forward to tonight. Hopefully, folks have got some gaming on this weekend. But regardless of whenever you end up watching or listening to this, enjoy the rest of whatever that is, your day, night, weekend, and please game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.